Rent's due today, I think agonizingly to myself. I ran a rough hand through the thick of my black hair, pulling loose the few knots that clung to the ends. I let out a defeated sigh, staring into the shell of a man that looked back at me in the bathroom mirror. The bags under my blue irises were all too evident, proof that I had hardly slept over the last week. Any time I didn't dedicate toward taking extra shifts at work, I spent worrying over the bills. I was a month behind on the electric, and the cable had long since been disconnected. Last month I had been over 2 weeks late with the rent, and it just about cost me everything. The landlord kept harassing me at the start of each day, pressuring me for the money I didn't have. There's no way he would tolerate another month of my excuses or pitiful sob stories, and in all honesty, I was tired of giving them. But maybe, just maybe, if I managed to pull an extra shift tonight, I just might be able to scrimp together the rest of what I needed.
Daddy?
The soft, concerned voice of my 6-year-old stirred me away from my thoughts. I turned to see her small frame in the doorway, hugging the beaten plush bear I had gotten her 2 birthdays ago. Her blonde curls had been in messy heaps around her face, and she had still been dressed in her nightgown. I forced a weak smile, trying to reassure her. Yes, honey?
I'm hungry.
Is that right? Well, how about we make some breakfast before you go to school? Her bright blue eyes lit up at the notion, and it momentarily relieved me of my stress. Go get dressed first, okay? She nodded before turning heel and heading back into her bedroom. I quickly pulled a black shirt over my head before making my way into the kitchen. I rummaged around in the fridge, a devastated frown covering my features at the emptiness within. 1 egg left, I mumbled aloud, moving to the pantry to shuffle through the last few meager cans before pulling out a box of pancake mix. I set to work, mixing just enough ingredients to make 3 small pancakes. By the time they had reached the pan, I could hear the shuffling of feet down the hallway, and once again I forced a smile. Aw, you look cute as a button today, Meg. She smiled, peering over her pink dress with satisfaction.
Daddy, Stuffy has another hole in his back.
She held out the small stuffed bear, pointing to the tear at the seam. Don't worry, sweetheart. Daddy'll fix it tonight after work, okay?
Okay.
I shuffled the 3 pancakes onto a small plate, watching her delight as she noticed the shape.
It's Mickey! It's Mickey!
That's right. Guess I'm not too bad a cook after all, am I?
Well, you still burn the toast sometimes, but it's okay.
I let out a soft chuckle, putting a small dollop of syrup on before taking a seat.
Aren't you going to eat, Daddy?
She tipped her head, and I could feel the horrible pit in my stomach tighten. Daddy's not hungry right now, so eat up. You need your energy for school today.
Don't you need strength for work, too?
Nah, Daddy's a superhero, remember? I'm as strong as an ox.
What's an ox?
I thought for a moment. Well, it's like a big cow with horns like this. I placed my index fingers up to my head and watched as she chuckled with amusement. It was then that I heard a knock at the door, and I turned to Meg with a grin.
Guess who?
He had let himself inside, a large smile as he cleared the short distance toward the kitchen.
Uncle Jess!
Bingo, Squirt.
He ruffled her hair and she laughed.
Hey, man.
He called in my direction, holding out his hand before we bumped fists. Hey, thanks for taking me into work today. I gotta get gas for the bike.
No problem. I'll take any excuse to see this little cutie.
Uncle Jess, I scraped my knee at the playground yesterday and I didn't even cry.
Is that right? Sounds to me like you're going to be a big girl.
The corners of Jess's mouth curved into a smile, and you could see his childish enthusiasm radiating in his wheat-colored eyes. Meg beamed with delight, and she finished up the remainder of her pancakes with a smile on her face. You better hurry outside, Meg. The bus will be here any minute.
Okay.
She sprung from her seat with the energy only a child her age could possess.
Where's my lunchbox, Daddy?
Shit, I instinctively muttered aloud, realizing that I had forgotten to make her lunch. I shuffled through my pockets only to realize that there had been no change to give her. But before I could even admit to my mistake, Jess had stepped in.
Here you go, Squirt. Go get yourself pizza today.
He handed her a $5 bill from his jeans pocket.
Yay! Thanks, Uncle Jess!
Come on, I'll walk you to the bus.
I looked at Jess with an expression of extreme gratitude, and he simply waved me off.
Love you, Daddy. See you after work.
I love you too, honey. Be good today. And with that, I was once again alone in my apartment. I took to cleaning her plate, washing it in the sink and running an old dish rag over it to dry. As I busied myself with the tidying, my mind once again began to wander. How was I going to be able to get groceries for the next week? I'd barely have enough to pay rent. Maybe I could try getting a week's extension. It went on like this for several minutes until I heard the front door open once more.
We better hurry if you want to get to work on time.
Hey, look, I really appreciate this.
No problem, man. It's not that much out of my way.
Yeah, but you don't clock in for another hour.
No worries. It'll give me a chance to flirt with the hot new call girl.
Her name's Maggie, first of all, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't want anything to do with you, pal.
Oh, you just wait. No girl can resist my charm.
Yeah, sure, whatever you say. Let's just get going, all right? We had continued to argue over his questionable antics until we arrived at work. I clocked in just in time, a sigh escaping my lips as I thought of the work ahead.
Well, you look like crap.
My eyes narrowed as I looked at Julia, her stern features unchanging as she eyed me up and down. Gee, thanks, Jules. It's nice to see you, too. She rolled her hazel eyes in my direction, leaning against the white-top counter in front of the workshop.
Did you even eat breakfast this morning?
Well, you're stern your nagging early this morning.
Jess interjected, and Julia had shot him a threatening glare.
So, did you?
I shook my head, the shame preventing me from telling the truth. Nah, not hungry.
You liar.
I should have known better than to try to lie to her. We had been friends for several years, and she knew more about my situation than I cared to admit.
Here.
She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small wad of cash, which I assumed to be around $60. I looked at her astonished as she held the money out for me to take. No, Jules, that's too much.
Oh, shut up. If anything, it isn't enough. Just take it.
But I can't. Not after you helped us out a few weeks ago.
I can do whatever the hell I want. Now take the money. It's not like it's for you anyways. It's for that cutie, Meg.
Jules, Thanks. I took the money she had so graciously offered, eyeing it as though it would vanish from my palms before putting it in my pocket.
Yeah. Just make sure you actually eat something before you come in tomorrow.
Jess had taken a seat on the lobby couch, folding his arms in front of him.
Well. Looks like the beast has a nice bone in her body after all.
Keep it up, Jess. I haven't had my coffee this morning and I'm feeling mighty testy.
Jess averted his gaze, and the two of them continued with their typical morning banter. I had still been in shock that Jules had offered me so much. Times were hard all around, and it must have been all the extra cash she had for the week. And to think she would give it up so freely. It alleviated a good chunk of my stress, and I knew that I would be eternally grateful for her generosity.
Oh, by the way, Maggie was asking about you yesterday.
Huh? I asked, befuddled, not quite understanding her point.
She was curious about your situation.
I was quiet, unsure of how to respond. Jess wasted no time in jumping into the conversation, eyes lighting up with playful jesting.
Dang. No wonder she wouldn't give me her number. That explains it.
Oh yeah, that's the reason.
What's that supposed to mean?
Julia, no longer bothering to squabble with him, turned, flipping her black curls in a bold display.
So, you gonna ask her out?
I was once again taken by surprise, and there was a nervous and uncomfortable feeling that developed in my chest. No.
What? But she's totally cute.
I no longer wished to have this conversation, and I quickly attempted to excuse myself. Well, I gotta get to work. See you later, and thanks again, Jules. I left before I could get roped into another discussion about my love life. It had not been the first time either her or Jess tried pestering me about it, but dating was not in my interest. Besides not being willing to meet someone, it's not like I had the funds to take someone out anyway. I mean, I was barely scraping by as it was, and my little one was my top priority. She was the only girl I'd ever need in my life. I popped the hood of an old Ford, inspecting the mechanics for any kink in the system. It didn't take long before my arms were covered in old oil and grease, as well as the smell that came right along with it. Fixing up cars wasn't my dream job, but it paid more than working fast food. I knew my way around an old engine. Still, the hours were long and the work was hard. Any dollar I made went straight towards the bills, and even then it wasn't always enough. Oftentimes I wondered if it was even worth it, if doing any of this even mattered. But it was at these times I always pictured my daughter. Each time I pulled myself under the weight of each vehicle, I saw her bubbly, smiling face. It gave me a reason to keep working, to keep fighting. And I knew all the blood, sweat, and tears were worth it. It had to be. I had not even managed to work for more than a few hours before Jess came bounding through the door. His expression gave me the immediate impression that something had gone terribly wrong, and I would never forget the tone in his voice when he uttered the word no parent ever wants to hear.
Damien, it's the school. Something happened to Meg.
My body moved of its own accord, thoughts rushing with the worst possible scenarios. As a parent, it must be an instinct to imagine the very worst when something pops out of the blue like this. But God, did I wish I was wrong. I nearly crashed into the counter, snatching the phone off the surface and jamming it to my ear. Hello? Yes, this is him. My expression must have turned dark, as both Jess and Jules looked at me as though I was about to snap. She what? I yelled into the receiver. Where is she now? I slammed the phone back down onto the hook.
What happened?
Jules's voice was riddled with anxiety, though I hardly noticed over my own fit of panic. Meg fell and hit her head. She's at the North Shore Hospital.
I'll drive you,
Jess offered, realizing my state, and in a mad dash we raced toward the car. The drive was agonizing, and had been one of the longest-lasting moments of my life. I was lost in a state of desperation and utter defeat. No matter how hard I worked, I couldn't control this from happening. It was out of my hands, and this fact terrified me.
She'll be all right. I know it.
Jess tried to comfort me, but I could not find any hope in his words. The ride was quiet until we pulled into the emergency parking lot. I was met by one of Meg's teachers who had apparently rode in the ambulance alongside her. What the hell happened? I asked, more crass than intended, and he looked at me with fiercely apologetic eyes.
One of the students said she had been climbing a tree and she lost her footing.
And where the hell were you teachers?
Sir, I'm sorry. We try to keep all our students safe. I sincerely apologize for what happened.
Just tell me what room she's in.
She's with the doctor, room 104.
I left Jess in the waiting room, sprinting past the nurse's station despite their attempts to handle the situation. I could hear my heart beat in my ears, and I could even feel the blood rush through my veins. I burst through the closed door, startled to see my little girl in the hospital bed. I was at her side in seconds, brushing past the doctor to take her hand in mine. Meg, honey, Daddy's here. I called to her, aware now that her eyes were not opening.
Sir, you're her father?
The doctor asked, to which I quickly nodded. What's wrong with her? Why isn't she opening her eyes? He had pointed to the lighted machine in front of me. The image of what I could assume to be Meg's x-ray lit up and enlarged.
This is an x-ray we took of your daughter's brain. There seems to be damage to the temporal lobe. I'd like to operate.
Wait, what? Operate? I felt dizzy, the ground seeming to move beneath my feet.
It's the only chance we have for her to pull through.
This can't be happening. Can you do it? Is she gonna be okay?
The success rate is about 60%.
60? You can't give me more than 60? This is my little girl we're talking about!
Sir, I understand. And we're going to do all that we can. But without the surgery, there is no chance at all. Do you understand that?
I felt my heart drop in my chest, and I desperately tried to wrap my head around the situation. I understand. Doc, please, she's all I have left.
I'll do all that I can.
I stared down at my daughter's face, putting her hand to my lips and kissing it as though she would break and fade away. I love you. Daddy will be right here whenever you wake up, okay? I hadn't even realized the tears that now rolled down my cheeks. They came without my consent or my knowledge. I watched as the doctor disappeared into a room into which I was not allowed, taking my entire world along with him. The stress in my limbs finally took hold, and I fell to my knees. Here I was, falling apart on the hospital floor, the feeling of helplessness overcoming me. What was I going to do? What could I do? She was all I had left in the world. Listen to me. And you listen good, you son of a bitch. Don't take her. Don't you take her away from me. My words came out in angry, sullen tones as I stared at the ceiling above me. You took the love of my life. You left me alone to raise our daughter. Don't you take her too. If you're there, if you give a damn about me at all, just let me have her. I begged, and I pleaded with the Lord. I didn't know if he was listening, or if he even cared to barter with someone like me, but it was all I could do as I trembled helplessly on the ground. I remembered the last time I had been here, watching the life drain from my lover's eyes. The pain was so much to bear, I didn't think that I could ever cope with it. And then I held Meg in my arms. One look into her perfect face, and I was captivated. Everything made sense again. It was all that would ever make sense. Please, I'm begging you. Take me instead. Just don't take my daughter. The hours had passed like seconds to a time bomb. I had somehow stumbled back into the waiting room with Jess, who never left my side. Whether this was out of comfort or sheer fear, I wasn't sure. My mind felt in a daze as I waited, staring at the clock on the wall with urgency. And finally, after 4 treacherous hours, the doctor arrived.
Mr. Carter.
I jumped from my seat, though it was a wonder how I managed to stand on my own accord.
She pulled through like a champ. She's in recovery now. If you'd like to see her.
I instinctively grabbed the doctor by his shoulders, pulling him to my chest and embracing him with all the strength that still remained. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. She's in room 118.
I hadn't noticed that Jess followed just behind me to the room, stopping just outside the door to give me time with her. I could see the bandage wrapped cleanly around her head. Her arms were hooked up to machines that sat in the corner of the room. But none of this mattered. I sat in the only chair by the bedside, once again taking her hand in my own. I studied how small it was in my palm, and so cold had it been that I wrapped my hands around hers.
I'm gonna call Jules. She's probably worried sick.
I heard Jess call from behind, and I nodded in agreement before he headed back down the long hallway. You sure made Daddy worry, I whispered, resting my head on her bedside. But I'm here now. And when you wake up, I'll be right beside you. Sleep had finally taken hold of me, and I found myself dreaming of her, the love of my life. Blonde hair cascaded down her back like rippling sunlight, and she smiled at me with such warmth and such love that it seemed to encompass me. I wanted to stay lost in this feeling, in this moment, forever.
Daddy?
The sound of her voice had awoken me from my dreams, and I could see Meg looking sleepily at me. Honey, you're awake. I grasped her hand, a gentle smile on my lips as I watched her confused glances all around the room.
Where am I?
Well, you had a little accident. You're at the doctor's. But they fixed you, okay? You're gonna be just fine. I continued to watch as she seemed to be thinking of something, completely capturing her attention.
Daddy, am I the reason Mommy isn't around anymore?
I was thrown into a state of bewilderment, and I sat upright. Of course not. Why would you think that?
Well, Mommy died giving birth to me.
Who told you that?
Mommy did.
I had lost all words to respond, unable to form any solid, rational thought.
But she said she loves me, and it's not my fault. She also said she loves you too, Daddy.
Mommy said that? I barely managed to mutter, my heart skipping a beat. What else did Mommy say?
She said it wasn't time for me to go yet. That Daddy still needed me to take care of him. Then she took my hand and led me home. Daddy? Daddy, why are you crying?
I embraced Meg with all that I had, the only way I knew to properly convey my love to her. Daddy loves you. You and Mommy. I always will. I could feel a pair of little arms wrapped gently around my back, and it made me cry all the more.
Oh, well. Look who's finally awake.
I pulled away at hearing the sound of Jess's voice.
How you feeling, kiddo?
Uncle Jess! I'm better now.
Glad to hear it.
Thanks for coming, Jess, I replied, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand.
Of course. I wouldn't miss the chance to see this cutie. Oh, by the way, a letter from the boss man. He said to take it right to you.
The letter? What is it?
Dunno.
I felt another wave of panic, taking the letter and swallowing hard. As I skimmed over it, I could feel the tears once more find their way back to me. And I reread the words aloud, doubting my own eyes. Damien, in light of the situation, you should take the next few weeks off. It'll be covered, of course, so no need to worry about the money. I also know how hard it's been for you and how much work you've been putting in despite that. In all honesty, this has been a long time coming, and I feel bad for even taking so long to do it. But starting the Monday you get back, you'll be starting at a new supervisor position. Consider this a promotion with a hefty raise. I hope this will be beneficial to your expenses and situation. Warm regards, Ralph.
Daddy, is everything okay? You're crying again.
Everything's okay, honey. From now on, you have nothing to worry about. Everything's gonna be fine.